All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And greetings, my credibility glasses are firmly in place. We are in for a ride today. A lot of guests coming through, a lot of news being made, and I think some fun to be had also. So it could be that kind of thing. Kim is here, and she's still fighting her cold, but she is, as I've noted in prior shows, as we all do on this enterprise, she is working hurt, everybody.
That's right. We do it.
Yeah. And Albert is here, of course.
Albert, thank
Albert,
you.
the commissioner of sports, has to be on some level excited. And on another level, because you're a Giants fan, you have to be, I suppose, it must be mixed emotions. You have this former Dodger star coming through. He's now very relevant in the politics of California. But Albert, the commish of sports, when you look at Steve Garvey, you got to admit, put all the loyalties to the Giants aside, he was a hell of a ball player and a hell of a competitor.
And 10-time All-Star, 1974 MVP. We could actually see his background in the green room right now, and I see a couple gold gloves in there. I think there's 4 gold gloves.
Yeah,
so.
4 gold gloves the guy got.
Are you guys gonna get a fan guy out?
We're going to fan guy out. Here's the plan. We're going to fan guy out Kelly Malloy. First of all, big shout out. I got an email from Kelly Malloy. I'll quickly do this before I get to Mr. Garvey. Kelly Malloy is, in addition to being a viewer of the show, Kelly Malloy is an Amazon driver, or at least in some way deals with Amazon from a delivery standpoint. And so when we had the story yesterday and the day before, we did a follow-up on the Amazon delivery that was jacked. Remember somebody stole an Amazon delivery truck?
The lady who thought that she wanted a ride to San Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said, and we talked about the fact that that driver had left the engine running and the keys in the truck.
Right.
And Kelly made the point that in a prior email, they really don't like that. You're not supposed to do that. That could get you fired. He says, drivers on any given this is a third email now. So I always love getting the...
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah. Drivers on any given non-peak day have 140 to 190 stops a day.
Wow.
Up to 300 packages. Multiple stops have multiple deliveries or 2 or more locations. Experienced drivers, he says, can complete their routes each day. Wow. That's a
work. That's a job.
Yeah,
that's a job.
That's a mountain to climb every day if you're an Amazon driver. Yeah. All right. I also want to mention what's coming up, and then I want to get to Steve Garvey. Kelly O'Coin, who is the great actor from Billions. He's also in the Oscar-nominated film The Holdovers. He'll be with us later this hour. Then the brilliant former federal prosecutor David Katz. You've seen him maybe on BBC television. You've seen him on New York, Fox 5 in New York, Fox News Channel, CBS. Across America, this guy regularly decodes, essentially, the situations legally that are related to so many things. There's a big trial not related to Donald Trump. I know everybody thinks Donald Trump and the new Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court will certainly be front and center. The Don Henley case is something that David Katz, I saw him opining on that. So we'll have some David Katz on that as well. There's a pretty controversial case involving the lyrics of Hotel California, et cetera. So we'll cover the gamut. That begins the next hour. And then finally, it's The Planet Stupid with Belinda Waymouth. We'll round out the second hour. Smash the like button. That's how we work. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's I give this guy a lot of credit. And I think, you can be a sports star and an extraordinary sports star, enjoy the accolades and enjoy the momentum of a brilliant career. I mean, Steve Garvey really did carry his baseball prowess and all of that into the private sector, you know. His personality and his profile extended beyond baseball. But now I think maybe one of his more challenging efforts to become the senator in California. He joins us now for a bit of a conversation that we will and will entertain all. How about it for Steve Garvey, everybody?
Thank you, Mark. Thanks. Great to be with you and Kim and Albert. Albert, could you keep going with those stats?
Yeah.
We may have to hire you to introduce me. So.
Yeah, Albert,
Albert, thank you.
You've got to admit, Commish, that Garvey also clutch, right? He's a clutch player.
Yeah, 2-time NLCS MVP. That's being really good at a really important time. So it's very impressive.
Thank you.
Steve Garvey, now we have a lot of people in Northern California and Northern and Central California, Giants fans, Sacramento also. And I really want them to hear from you because I think there's a lot of Southern California connect to you. Sure. I also would love for people who at least be able to connect with you and hear you anyway in northern parts of the state. You know, you want to be the senator for the whole state. What were the Giants doing, Albert? You can maybe help me with this also. And Steve Garvey, during the time you were they? Who was on that team? Was that a team that was competitive?
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's going way back to the boroughs of New York, and then of course a longer story of Horace Stoneham and the Giants coming out, and Walter O'Malley and the Dodgers, and the long story of O'Malley. Was quietly going to come out here. He let everybody know. It got to Stoneham. Stoneham rushed out, took San Francisco. He thought O'Malley was going there. Did this deal for Candlestick Point.
Right. That didn't.
They snookered him in, and went back to New York and had a press conference. And he said, "Finally, I've got that blank O'Malley. I'm going to California first." 2 days later, O'Malley had a press conference and said, "We're going to L.A." And they said Stoneham was drunk for 2 weeks afterwards. But the rivalry came out to the West Coast. Longer story, I was a bat boy for the Brooklyn Dodgers, spring training in Florida for 6-7 years. So I knew the history. So by the time I made the team, playing the Giants was special to me. And then fast forward 50 years when, I've been considering running for about 4 months before I announced October 8th. When two Giant fans with their hats on came up to me and said, "Garb, we hate the Dodgers, but we'll vote for you," that sealed the deal.
That's a great story. That really is a great story.
But, all the currency of living here for 50 years, loving this state, playing in LA and San Diego, I had a passion for the game. And when you're in the entertainment business, if you realize that you're playing for the people, you're acting for the people, singing for the people, whatever, it's a deeper understanding of commitment and residual. I always say not too many people can go to work in front of 20 or 30,000 people who are critiquing your job every day, and you succeed and fail, but they see who you are, your passion, your commitment. And then in my case, there's an old saying, the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and then the day you realize why. And I realized that I had this blessed career, and I was able to take it once I retired to helping build businesses and charities and traveling up and down the state. I've spoken all over the state, so it's not new for me to say, and my wife said this to me. She said, you never took the field for Democrats or Republicans, independents, libertarians. You took the field for all the fans, and now you're truly running for all the people of California.
Well, in an increasingly divided country, and even the state of California, I think in some ways we're not governable, or we're barely governable. There are just so many factions here. It's red and blue, but really, dug in hard. Sure. It's good to hear that. So you feel, even though you identified as a GOP candidate, you don't feel an anger toward the Democratic side. You don't feel there's no recrimination on your part toward anything that is happening in the blue part of California.
Yeah, I'm a team builder. I've built teams. We won championships. I've built, like I said before, companies and work with charities. I'm chairman of a couple of them. If you were to say, what do you really feel in your soul that you've been able to accomplish? I said, it's unifying people. It's bringing people together. And in this case, it's a one-party state. There's a suppression of any other voices. Good men and women have tried to run, but people have said, oh, in this state, there's no way anybody that's a conservative or, in my case, a moderate, who believes in common sense and compassion and consensus has a chance. And then about 9 months ago, I got up in the morning, watched TV, turned it on, just woke up, and there was a dysfunctional Washington. Career politicians were fighting for power and not the people. When I tapped my wife on the shoulder and she said, yeah, I said, let's run for the Senate, honey. And she, as a dutiful wife, turned over the other way, and the women realized it. And then she turned back and she looked at me and she said, with that little smile, don't you think you're a little young? And I said, well, and I thought of the Reagan line. I think I can overcome my youth and inexperience with this. And that began probably 4 months of going around the state, talking to people, asking them about their life. What's their life really like every day? So that I had a feel for, is there a pathway to run in the state for somebody that has my belief about running for the people and not for a job, and not for power, but for them? And then we decided on October 8th of all times, day after the Israeli war started.
Sure.
And we still got a lot of traction. So for almost the last 5 months, we've had great momentum because people are standing up and saying, Steve, thank you for running. You know what our life is like. We trust you. We watched you for a long time now, and there's time for change.
The things that frustrate you the most in California would be what?
Well, the separation now between the vanishing middle class, between wealth and welfare. When my career opponents are looking down at the people and telling them, your life's fine. You live in California. You should appreciate living in California. Where in essence, mothers will tell me they get up in the morning trying to figure out what they can feed their children this week. Can they afford steak this week? Can they go out to a fast food restaurant, on Fridays? And then dad goes to the gas station. And I've watched this gas station near us in the mornings, and hardworking Californians come in. They're going to, they used to come in and buy 10 gallons of gas, and now they've been buying $10 worth of gas. So these things that may sound little, you go to the grocery store, it's 20 to 50% more for things like eggs and milk. So it's tough. And this is a good statistic, well founded. 88% of Californians break even or lose money every month. And that's not fair to them. And I remember when I first came here, 70s, this was the heartbeat of America, California. And it's not now. Can it come back? Absolutely. Somebody frustrated like mine, new ideas, consensus builder, going to Washington 6 years. I'll be a one-term senator. And starting on day one, meeting with all 99 other senators, people say, oh, you can't do that. Trust me, I can do. I've proven that I played 8.5 years straight, 1,207 consecutive games. I can go to every office, reach out my hand and say, I want to work with you for the betterment of the people of your state and for this country. And that's how you start. You reach across the aisle and mean it. And in this state, people are now realizing they haven't had a voice. They have a voice. And we've gone from 0 to almost 25% in less than 5 months now, and building momentum.
You're going to see a broken system if you get to Washington and you meet with all of those. You're going to see special interests. You know how Washington works, even as a civilian looking in. How do you avoid that connection? I mean, it seems as though and you know this very well, in trying to run for public office, you need money. And a lot of these people are beholden to special interests that give them just that. Yeah.
Well, I'm not a politician, obviously. I don't owe anyone anything. I owe the people a lifetime of currency, of friendship and knowing each other. And I owe it to them to get up every day, to go to the Senate. I'm going to show up like I did on the baseball field and start to look to first areas of people who want to work together. And then once you start showing success, and it's not going to happen on the first day and the first week, but over time, I would say that first 18 months, will make significant inroads. And it all depends on who has the majority. There seems to be a shift this year. I mean, the timing is right for somebody like me who is a moderate, who wants to work with people, who's running for all the people, that if I make this, which I will, we will see change, and people will start feeling good about themselves. Let's get back to that free market capitalism, where people get up in the morning, they have a dream, and they know the harder they work, they're gonna realize that. Whereas today, they get up in the morning and they wonder how they're going to make it work, and their dream's been dulled.
The president is at the border today, and the former president, Donald Trump, also at the border. And obviously, immigration and our border policy is another front and center issue in California. Thoughts on how there might be a strategy in handling that?
Well, I've been to the border. I said in our debates to my opponents haven't been to we've been there. I said, not recently. You don't know what it's like. I started at the corner of San Diego and Tijuana at the ocean with the U.S. Border Patrol. Then we worked our way periodically for 15, 20 months, almost up to Jocumbo, where the latest flood of immigrants coming in. And they don't try to run away. 20, 30 people as groups come through an opening in the wall. By the way, there's a couple hundred yards here and there where the wall was supposed to be built under this administration. It stopped, and that's where they're coming in. They stick up their hands, and the Border Patrol said, we become administrators. We take names, we fill out this card, and in 72 hours, they have a debit card for $5,000, maybe $10,000. If they stay in the state of California, they're going to get welfare. But if you ask them where they're from, Venezuela, South Africa, the Chinese, they know where they're going. And in the case of the Chinese, 4,000% influx from October of Chinese. And by the way, they're not in ragged clothes. They're dressed decently. They say, well, we're going to Seattle, going to Atlanta, going to the north. They systematically are starting to infiltrate these United States. So we got to secure the border, one thing. We have a pathway. We have a process to becoming a legal citizen in this country we've had for generations. There are tens of thousands of people around the world who have gone to their embassies in their countries, have done it the right way, register, are waiting to come here and enter this country, and then start a process to becoming citizens. But if we secure the border, whatever it takes, it's at the military, maybe the National Guard, the fentanyl that's coming in and drugs, human trafficking. We don't vet these illegal immigrants for medical reasons, so who knows what they're bringing in. We've got to, as soon as we can, once we secure it, re-vetting those that are here, and now finding out if they are terrorists, if they're here for the wrong reasons. So over the last 3 years, 3.5, 10 to 12 million illegal immigrants have come in. That's the war on America, and it's got to stop. We've got to get back to common sense. Compassion, yes, but let's stop this.
What does secure the border mean, asks Randy. Do you have when you say secure the border, what do you mean?
Well, we have to make sure that they go through ports of entry. I'm not so sure like what Texas has done with barbed wire and so forth. Is it effective? Yes. Are they protecting their state? Yes. But this has to be a collaboration between the federal government and the states, making sure they go through the pathway. If they try to go in other points, capture them and send them back. Let's get back to, remain in Mexico. That was a great program. I mean, at the end of the last administration, it was 1,000 immigrants a day. And now 6, 8, 10, 12,000. I mean, this is unconscionable because of the stress. And nobody really talks about the American citizen, U.S. citizens, who are at the forefront of all these illegal immigrants coming into the country. Let's have compassion for them first.
I'm getting a lot of this. I only have you for another minute or so, but I'm getting a lot of this, and so I want to give you a chance to a bite at this apple. Yeah. Well, here's an extreme example of what I'm seeing. He supports Trump. Case closed. No on Garvey. You've heard this. You know this. And you are someone who does really quack like a moderate in every way. When I speak to you, when I hear you weigh in on the issues, you really do seem to rep a moderate position. How then can you square that with someone like Trump, who does seem so extreme? This is all through the chat, and I wanted to give you a chance to answer that.
I'm always going to be honest and straightforward. When they asked me in the first debate, I said, listen, I did vote for him twice. I'm not active out there because I have the single most difficult position to run for in the United States, and that's a moderate in the state of California. He's not in my race, nor is anybody else. But I voted for him the first time because his opponent looked down at the American people and called them deplorables. The second time, the man he was running against was sequestered in the basement in his home every day, only came out in a fixed environment with fixed questions. And by the way, nobody's a bigger fan than Ronald Reagan. I wouldn't have voted for Reagan if he would have been in the basement and didn't come out and see the people. So my opponents are trying to paint me into the far right and say MAGA and all these things. But the people know it's just not true. Because when you put the people first, you're always going to listen. You're going to, and by the way, I said voting is the single greatest currency we have. And it should be personal. The people of California are going to make personal decisions, as I am. So let's hold this currency. They're trying to paint me. They haven't been able to do that because the people are speaking. Our momentum is building, and we can't wait for Tuesday.
So appreciate you stopping through. It's a big mountain to climb, as you suggest, in California for someone like yourself or any candidate on the GOP side. You're in second place, it would appear, which is sort of where you need to be.
Right.
And as I say, I feel as though you seem as though you're ready to put the hard work in. And I'd love for you to come back through, and we'll hit you with some more policy stuff, should it be workable. And I really have enjoyed our time together that we've spent just personally in studio at KFI in Los Angeles. And this is really great that you stopped through here.
Mark, thanks so much. And you're right. Number one, I won't be worked because the reason I'm running is well worth getting up every day and dedicating myself. And as the next elected U.S. Senator, it'll be the greatest honor of my life. And thanks for having me. Let's do it again.
Good. Look forward to it. Steve Garvey, everybody. Bravo. Bravo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, that was a first visit with Steve Garvey. I hope there'll be others, and I hope that there'll be others in the race who will come on. We put the call out to Katie Porter, to Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and predictably, nothing. I'll tell you, I'm not here to grill him. I wasn't grilling him. You can make your own, I think, judgments on any number of things. These are complex issues, and frankly, in a short time, it's hard to get into them. But on his second go-round after this, there'll be another election, essentially, after, I suspect, if he finishes second, we can be integrating more of what your concerns were. My concerns from a standpoint of legislation that's happening on the national level is associated with women's right to choose and the clear, as I've told you, the theological philosophies, perverted as they are, that are getting into the legislative process. It's troubling.
I agree with Roberta. She says, very interesting to have him on the show. Thank you, Mark. There's a lot of people who were like, why would you give him a platform? Like, why would you do that? And I think he's a candidate for the California Senate seat. And it's really important to hear what people have to say. If you don't agree with what they have to say, that's fine, but at least hear them out so that when you are filling out your ballot, you can make the most informed choices. Just because you hear the person doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that comes out of their mouth.
One of the things that bothers me is if we just become this echo chamber.
Yeah.
That's why I put Andrew Peters on once in a while, who always shows up in our chat, or Chris. These people who show up in our chat are wildly outnumbered by those who kind of share my general bent. But we put them on to begin a conversation and let me respond and then you respond, etc. So again, it's a sense of the man. I also really didn't get to answer a question. I'm sure you'd consider this a softball question, but I'm really interested and curious about how you go from where he's gone in the private sector, even though he's a high-profile guy. Look, Schwarzenegger ran for governor. He was high-profile. That's half the battle is name recognition. But still, then you're being queried on policy, then you have to raise money. It's a very interesting animal, this world of politics and running for public office, and I really wanted to hear about that. Need more info about what he'd do about California issues. And let me just say this also. There's a laziness about the attacks on a guy who you go, well, Garvey, he's GOP, he's going to be, against women's right to choose. Go to his website. There's stuff on there. There's specific policy positions on his website. And I feel like I let down the process here a little bit by not mentioning that sooner, and maybe we should have posted his website. But all I'm trying to say is he does have specific policy positions. You can see where his general strengths are, he feels. Team building, reaching across the aisle, trying to represent everybody. That's really, as I see it, the strength that he sees he can bring to the job. Now, you can decide on your own. Can he, can't he? It needs more than that. We're too far apart on policy. Okay, fine. I'm just trying to give you a sense of the man. And I think you got a little, why would you trust his website? That's what you're saying, Donald? Seriously? Okay, dude, I don't know what to say. Why would you trust him? Why would you trust, I don't know. You're gonna do that. I don't know what to say.
Well, you would trust his website because that's the information he wants to put out into the world. It tells you a lot about someone, like, okay, well, this is who they are.
It's true. It could all be a fraud. You're absolutely right. He gets in, doesn't do anything. We've certainly seen it before recently. But I'm going to give him credit, again, based on knowing a bit of who he is through these various, there it is, stevegarvey.com, if you want to read more. For it not being a fraud. Anyway, palate cleanser upcoming.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I also want to just acknowledge that Richard Lewis passed away, the brilliant comedian. He was so very talented, and he created a kind of angst, borderline depression act, around. It was so very funny. Look, the whole phrase, blank from hell, oh my God, it was the date from hell, whatever from hell, that comes from Richard Lewis. He began that. He was a favorite of Johnny Carson, of Letterman, and he got on the talk shows and he really made it work. And of course, as you know, in the most recent years, he was a regular on Curb Your Enthusiasm. There he is with Larry David. And he was brilliant there in what is a largely improvised show. It was a shock, but I guess he'd been battling Parkinson's for some time now. So it's a sad bit of news that Richard Lewis passes away. He was 76, wasn't he, Kim?
Yes, he was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
he had a heart attack. He had Parkinson's. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's, but it was a heart attack that he died from at his home in Los Angeles. So,
did you ever cross paths with Richard Lewis? I did, actually. Often. I'd see him for a time. Often. The studios where I worked were in Hollywood, and there's a little place near Hollywood called Larchmont. And I'd always see him there. So if you're eating kind of al fresco, Richard Lewis would come up and he'd sit down and he'd chat. He was very nice, fun. He made neurotic funny. That's a great call, John. That's exactly right. Giant in the 80s and 90s. Really sad to lose a comic mind like that.
Yeah.
And rest in peace. Kim's news, and then Kelly O'Coin, and we talk about.
I'm really excited about Kelly O'Coin. He's so funny.
Oh, he's very talented as an actor.
Oh, totally.
He's been in so many different projects, and he hasn't been necessarily funny in those projects. They haven't been those kinds of things, but he is funny.
Just emailing back and forth with him to set up the interview for the show. He's hilarious.
He's funny in emails, and we'll see how he is in person. Also, he has a background in, which might be interesting to this crowd, politics.
Really?
Real politics.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll get to that as well. So smash the like button like a boss. Kim's news. And then Kelly. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's dueling presidents at the border, you could say. Yeah, that's happening today, where President Biden is in Texas. He is going to be talking to folks with the Border Patrol and talking to leaders there. He'll be in Brownsville, Texas, and Trump is got plans, he says, on mass deportations if he's elected. He's scheduled to speak in Eagle Pass, Texas. So both at the border, both in Texas, they're not expected to come into contact with each other at all. But of course, a hallmark of, making the border a major campaign issue has both of them in Texas today. Texas, meanwhile, is raising its fire preparedness level to 3 as record-setting wildfire in the Panhandle rages. Texas A&M Forest Service says the Smokehouse Creek fire has now combined with another wildfire to burn more than 1 million acres. With the raised preparedness level, outside help from other regions or states may now be required to fight what has become the largest wildfire in Texas history.
Make no mistake about it. This is the climate crisis come to Texas. This was a drought-ravaged region that is now being affected by these fires, and it is a catastrophe on a massive level. Loss of livestock, loss of land, loss of life. It is out of control, but it is most directly related to the climate crisis.
Residents in Athens, Georgia, holding the mayor responsible for the murder of a nursing student on the University of Georgia campus. An immigrant here illegally from Venezuela was arrested last week in connection with the death of 22-year-old Laken Riley. Protesters held signs that said, "Blood on your hands" and "Make Athens safe again." Well, Mayor Kelly Gertz spoke at a news conference on Wednesday morning. A lot of people pretty angry about that. President Biden says negotiations are ongoing for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, but will likely take longer than he had hoped. As he was leaving for Texas today, the president told reporters it's doubtful that it will happen by Monday, which was the date that he had hoped it would. The president earlier this week, said ceasefire could come by next week. So keep our eye on it. A 13-year-old student accused of starting a fire that caused serious damage at a middle school gym and injured a teacher. This happened in Pasadena. The fire started Tuesday morning in a locker room at Marshall Fundamental School. The teacher was treated for smoke inhalation. The gym suffered an estimated $100,000 in damage. The student accused of starting the fire was detained for questioning, but as of this report, not arrested. There's a new hospital coming to San Jose. Kaiser Permanente confirms plans are on track to replace its now 50-year-old medical center with a brand new building. This one will be more than twice the size, standing 6 stories tall with 303 beds. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan says this will create a lot of jobs, allowing Kaiser to hire a few hundred people. The construction set to start next year in a nearby lot and is expected to last through early 2028. In Los Angeles, Echo Park area, there's a 101-year-old church in danger of collapsing. The recent heavy rain led to water collecting on the roof of the Echo Park United Methodist Church, which is famous for its golden dome. The moisture caused the wood to rot and the ceiling and the walls holding up the dome to collapse. The church's pastor says structural engineers told him repairs will cost at least $200,000. If you have a Chevy Camaro, maybe you're a hot guy in a hot car, the Los Angeles Police Department is warning about a huge spike in Chevy Camaro thefts.
What?
There have been about 90 Camaro thefts reported in LA since the start of the year, nearly 1,200% of an increase from all of 2023 when just 7 were stolen. Investigators say thieves often try to sell stolen Camaros on social media. Police are also noticing more Camaros at street takeovers, so I guess they're the new hot car.
There's never been anything like this.
I had a Camaro once.
Did you really?
Sure. Had it all murdered out is what they call it, and you take the grill, you replace it with a different kind of grill, and you darken the windows, and you
That's
put
not
some
fake.
special.
That's
yeah.
real.
Oh, it was sexy, baby. I
Seriously?
had cops pulling me over just to see the car. It was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was hot.
I'm
That was back when I was hot.
Know what you are talking about.
More of a Mustang girl myself, but all right, if you want the Camaro, that's all right. I don't know what to think of you in a Camaro. I can't see it.
No,
Like,
neither could anybody else. It was a weird look for me.
Well,
It spoke to the teenager inside me, but sadly it didn't speak to anyone else that way.
You're
It
more
was
of like,
odd to see this middle-aged, mid-crisis riddled guy getting out of the Camaro. It was odd.
I picture you, and I mean, I now know you've got the Tesla, right? But I picture you in more of a Mercedes SL convertible.
Well,
You're kind of
thank you.
You got
I
a little
like
class
that.
to you.
I'm
kind of a big deal.
You're right.
I mean, the guy with the Camaro has an edge. I don't know, Mark. I don't know.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Yeah. Okay. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. With the tea, with the coffee, with the special stuff, it is really, really good. Best coffee Mark has ever tasted.
Yes,
and I'm
true.
loving the tea as well. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you can find it, and you do get the 10% off. Oops, sorry, I'll take the picture down. You get the 10% off if you enter Mark T at checkout. Mark T is what you enter at checkout. Take a look at all the offerings there at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Oh, yes. You will be happy. I promise you.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I love it. I love it. Seldom do I invite guests on that overshadow me the way this guy will, but I do it because I'm so taken with him. He is in an Oscar-nominated film, The Holdovers. Damn straight. You may know him as Dollar Bill and Billions in The Americans. He's done a lot of work. And his history, his personal history, I think will also fascinate you. Kelly O'Coin, everybody.
Hey. How are you?
Look at you.
Hey,
Wow.
look at you, Brother Mark. Camaro.
Very exciting.
Huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Never, ever saw that coming.
There is a muscle car loving guy inside me, and yet it doesn't square with the rest of my. There's talk that the Dodge people are going to put a Challenger Hellcat, which was the fastest. When they made it, it was the fastest production car made in America, and I got it. 707 horsepower. So ridiculous. Wow. But that was how broken I am, how broken I was and am. Now I wouldn't drive it if it was a combustion engine, right? So
okay, good man.
But they're coming out with an electric version apparently, and that I might.
What?
So
I
anyway.
could see that. I also, I've never owned one, but I'm a vintage Mustang.
Kim,
appreciator as well, and I would definitely go for an electric one of those.
Kelly likes the Mustangs just like Kim does. So I want to start with the Holdovers, I guess, only because it's just so much right now in the zeitgeist. It's such a good movie, and you're so good in it. It's a kind of pivotal scene for those who haven't seen the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'll just say that, there's a real important piece of information that comes across during that scene, but it's a small scene. How did it come to you, and did you, because of it being sort of a smaller scene, was there a moment where you thought, maybe not? Oh, what happened to Kelly? Why can't I hear him? Did he lean on something? Not that I wouldn't prefer just to hear myself, but I'd like to hear Kelly. I don't hear him. What happened, Albert? I blame you, Albert. What's going on?
He might be muted. You might want to check your settings to see.
Check because you're not muted on our in our world, so you might be muted in your world.
Yeah, there's a bottom settings tab. You could hit audio and pick which one.
Everyone's guessing muted. Yeah, guys, we got it. Muted.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Let me try to help them out there.
Yeah. No, I know they're trying to help. I'm kidding. There's something on your board all of a sudden that you hit that muted you because we were hearing you fine.
Yeah, he's not muted on our end, but maybe his little plug came out or something happened.
His little plug came out. Thank you very much, Kim.
Yeah, that's my technical
right. Well,
Kim, how are you?
Diagnosis of the day.
So let's try to put him in again and see if we can hear him. Okay. Anybody? You want to put him in? Bring him on. Better?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Little plug.
Yeah, I know. It was a little, I thought that was
you guys have to take it as some manly thing that I,
always,
this is not.
Always. And you have to understand that we take it that way.
We take it that way.
Avoid that.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So now the film, The Holdovers, it was a small scene. Was there a part of you that felt, it's so small, maybe I won't do it?
There was. I actually had auditioned for a bigger role. And it went well, and I had a meeting with Payne, and I really
Alexander
thought
Payne is the director, right?
And I really thought, I think I might get this, and it was like three scenes maybe, and I didn't get that. They offered me this, and in my immediate thought, because when I read it on the page, it didn't feel like much. But again, Payne called me directly, which I just thought was, lovely for a small little role, having the director call. And then Giamatti texted me. He's like, come up. It'll be fun. We'll hang out. It'll be great.
Well, you know Giamatti from Billions. Yeah.
Right. We never get to work together. We never do any scenes together, but we've developed a friendship over the years. He's a great guy. And I'm really glad I did, because there actually was so much more to that scene. I mean, I joke, you blink and you miss it, but there was a lot to that scene. It ended up being lovely. So I'm really glad I got over myself and didn't just say, no, 3 scenes or nothing, or whatever the fuck I was thinking at the time. And did it, because it really was lovely. It was lovely to work with the director. It was lovely to meet Dominic Sessa, who's great. And it was lovely to play with Paul. And I'm proud of it. It's a beautiful film. So I'm proud of it.
Oh, it really, and it's kind of an old school film in that there's a beginning, a middle, and end. Yeah. I really like that. Yeah. Love the Holdovers, says Vilma. Let me ask you about this scene. I'm always curious about process when it comes to any number of things, and so it is with acting. When you are doing that scene, because it was just so perfect. I mean, you were almost unrecognizable in the scene. I was so into the movie. The number of times you have to do it, the number of different things that happen, like how long does a scene like that take? I'm curious, start with how many times you had to do it.
I'm trying to remember exactly. It was freezing cold. It was a particularly cold evening. And 3 days I was up there.
What happened with his audio now again?
No,
no, it's back. It's back.
Okay. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
It's really echoey too, isn't it?
No. It sounds fine. Your audio actually sounds good. Yeah, go ahead.
It was blizzard conditions for each day, just before we shot and just after we shot. So we got very lucky. I think we shot for maybe 2-3 hours. It wasn't that much. The direction just he takes. I've since learned he's very meticulous about casting. So he doesn't really have to he seems to not have to do much directing per se once he just lets the actors go loose, except to say something like, maybe he's trying to fuck with them a little bit, or maybe, no, I liked it better when you weren't fucking with them, or try this, I saw you do this in the first take, maybe try that and hit it a little harder, and so that kind of thing was pretty much all we worked with. And at a certain point, it's just like, okay, great, I want to give you more next time. And I was like, okay.
And that was it. But it was just the one day then.
Yeah. And it was not shot in Boston. I can't remember the name of the town right now, but it was right next to that lovely skate rink. And by the way, did you know anything about Dominic Sessa? The fact that this was his first screen role?
No, he was terrific.
He was terrific. And he actually went to the school they filmed in. He was a senior.
Oh my God, that's great.
The drama teacher, it was like, look at this guy, because they were having trouble finding that character. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
What a breakout.
Well, and he's got to play in a band with Paul Giamatti. I mean, that's the thing. I always feel like acting is one of those, you have to act in the troupe.
Yep. Yeah. And Divine Randolph, who's just was a revelation. I've always liked her. It's just so cool that she got a chance to play a role like this and really show the range of the stuff she could do. So I'm happy to be part of it.
Loved it. Want to see it again now, just to pay closer attention to Kelly's scene. And then people know you from Billions. I mean, Billions had a really great run with the dollar bill rule. Yeah,
so much fun. So much fun. I think you and I have talked about this before. When you and I first met, you were like, "It's really weird how unlike Dollar Bill you are."
It is true. It is true. I guess that's why they call it acting.
Yeah. I mean, my wife has told me you bring an ounce of Dollar Bill home and you are out.
Well, was that the turning point, or was it the Americans? I feel like maybe. What was the turning? You're a working actor,
right?
And we had Ed Begley Jr. on yesterday, and for him it was Saint Elsewhere.
Yeah.
He was a series actor. He'd get an episode or two, and then and he was in a movie here and there. But once he had Saint Elsewhere, bam! It really got. What was your moment like that?
I don't think I have a hard time judging where I am. I think I've got an actor's well-honed sense of impending doom. But I don't think I have yet had the Ed Begley moment. I think Billions in my career, what has got me to the position where I can actually get some offers sometimes. I'm in the room auditioning for better and bigger roles and bigger projects, and I think it's more. I don't have to be as afraid as I used to be that my audition tape won't be seen. I think at the very least and worst, if I audition, that tape will always be looked at this point. I think that started to happen with the Americans, and there was a role. It was like a 4-episode arc on House of Cards with Michael Kelly, and it wasn't huge, but there was something about it. My character was like literally the only sweet, guileless person ever on that show, and I think people took to it. So there was something about that kind of raised the profile a little bit. And then the first 2 seasons of Billions, I was also doing the Americans. So there was something about that happening at the same time.
I see.
Because
and it's interesting. You put yourself on tape. That's how these things work now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do now. It used to be we get to go in the room, the audition room, and that's very rare now. Everything I've booked, definitely since the pandemic, everything I've booked has been on tape, but self-tape at home. But it was moving that way anyway. I hate it.
Yeah, well, I would think on some level you can just, in terms of direction and that kind of thing, get the in the room the dynamic that you might have on a set with maybe, hey, can you try one more time this way or that way, right? Yeah.
Well, you know that the casting director essentially knows what they want, or at least has an idea, or has worked with the directors and the producers and the writers enough that he or she will have a sense of it. The other thing is, like, a lot of young people who don't know any different love it because you can just do take after take. You can do 100 takes if you want till you get it perfect.
Oh, I see.
Which is bullshit, because that's diminishing returns after, like, at most 4 or 5 takes. I mean, if you don't have it and you haven't rehearsed it and made choices, then you're not. I mean, maybe you will. I won't. I get exhausted.
Yeah.
So the thing about going in the room was it kept you from spiraling into, if I just have one more take, I'm going to get perfect,
Well, it is true. I just do VO stuff, and it's the same way. You record yourself and send it off, and I hate it because I used to work in the studio, used to go in, and there'd be somebody there telling you, make it a little more of a wry read, make it drier, take something off, put something more on. And when you hear it back, you always think you can do a better take the next time.
Totally. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. You do have, by the way, the greatest voice in all of American media. I aspire to these mellifluous tones of yours.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. All right. Now I want to get to your origin story a little bit, away from the acting and to a little bit of the politics.
Sure.
You grew up very close to politics, didn't you?
I did. My grandmother was vice president of the League of Women Voters in Oregon, and my grandfather was president briefly of the Oregon Grange. And my parents were both activists at young ages. And when I was 1970, my dad was elected to the state legislature of Oregon. 2 years later, he was the majority leader, youngest majority leader ever in Oregon, the Oregon State Legislature. And then in 74, he was elected to U.S. Congress. So we went back to D.C., and he was in office from 74 to 92.
Wow.
When he ran for Senate, he was going to be, it wasn't public, but he was going to go one term and out because he was kind of getting sick of it. Certainly was getting sick of having to run and raise money every 2 years. But he was like, okay, one Senate term, 6 years. I can do a lot of good. I can plan what I'm going to do afterwards. I'm only going to be like mid-50s by the time I'm out, and this is going to be perfect. And we lost by 3 percentage points to Bob Packwood, who had to resign, I think, a year and a half later.
Right.
And we had the story. And the number of other papers had the story as well. The decision was made in our camp, to at least our family, that we weren't going to do anything to push the story or leak the story. We knew certain papers had it and they weren't going with it.
This is a story of, you're talking about, this is a
I'm
story.
sorry.
Yeah.
Of Packwood. Sorry. Yeah. The 20 some women had come forward and accused him of harassment, and he tried to, and what, anyway, people could look it up and find out, but that was the story. And,
so you felt as a family that it was unseemly, or you were just not on brand for you to?
I think it was both of those things, and also at the time we thought, well, people aren't going to take it seriously if it actually came from the Aucoin campaign.
Oh,
that's what the Packwood people were telling the papers, apparently, from what I heard. No, this is just a made-up story. That you're getting it from the Aucoins. And so if we had given them the story, whether or not it was true, it would literally have been coming from us, and people wouldn't have taken it seriously. And we deemed that would be the bigger tragedy. I think I was the only one at the time that was like, just leak it. Come on, just let me make a phone call to a radio show. Mark Thompson's got a show down in but I'm glad it came out. It's sad. It's a sad time.
And it's sad that it took something like that. I mean, your dad would have been so much better in every way, but I mean, that it's sad that it took something like that to get rid of Packwood. But
anyway, that was
your life. But your life around politics in Washington, what would surprise us? What was for those who haven't been around it, like what was it like being, in that family with so many serious responsibilities associated with what your dad was doing?
It was actually incredibly mundane most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
If I had been back in the district, because it took a lot to get back and forth from the district to DC. And my dad did go out a lot, but my mom got a job in DC, and we spent most of our time there. And if we had been in the district, I think it would have felt a little bit more like we were under a microscope. But everybody was somebody interesting in politics in DC, so it really didn't. That was kind of nothing. One of the things I don't know if it's still the case, but there is a congressional gym. So at crazy hours between votes, Congress people can go down and work off some steam.
There's a basketball court there too.
And there's a basketball court. And my dad, because I played all through high school. He was all-state in high school, so we bonded over basketball. And there was one time I went and I forgot to bring my shoes, my basketball shoes. Kids were allowed to go. Offspring of Congress people were allowed to go. I forgot to bring my shoes, and it turned out that these members and former members, because all former members could keep lockers there as well, they shared their stuff. So he went on, he grabbed a pair of sneakers that fit me from someone's locker, and we started playing, and he said, by the way, you're wearing the vice president's shoes. And it was George H.W.
That's great.
What?
And, that's
terrific. And so we played, and we put them I put them away. I was waiting for my dad to get, he was showering or changing. And it's just like 20 minutes after we were done, the doors burst open. There's some Secret Service guys, and it's freaking George Herbert Walker Bush going to his locker, taking his shoes and being like, oh, they're sweaty or they're warm or something like that. And I just was like, So yeah, I spent a day in the vice president's shoes. Yeah, I walked a mile in the vice president's shoes.
Terrific story. So you're a Trailblazers fan. That's why we see the basketball and all the pictures of
Bill Walton right there. Yeah.
Commish, do you have anything
painful.
You want to? Albert is the commissioner of sports on this show. Albert, do you have?
Albert, he might be devastated because our Bay Area native Dame Lillard was there for the longest time, and and apparently he's very bored in Milwaukee. I'm not sure if you saw.
I just saw that story that he's lonely, and I mean the guy's never been around. He's never been away from his family. You know, like it's. I feel like he's one of those guys where the loyalty thing was not lip service. Like he really, really, really wanted to make it work in Portland. And I really think he loved Portland. It just at a certain point, the team was not making the moves that made it likely that they would even contend within 5 years or so. And I think they're making the right moves now. It's just tragic to me that they couldn't do it around that guy. Because God, what a superstar. What a good person too. I miss him. So.
Well, next time we'll run your highlights from your distinguished career as a basketball player. I mean, even an amateur. Look at I'm seeing this to share with you quickly. His character was genuinely kind in that scene, Copper says, not trying to embarrass Paul's character or blow his own horn. Yeah, I thought actually that scene. This is a scene in The Holdovers. We're just finishing up our last minute or so with Kelly O'Coin. I thought that scene was going to take a different. I thought that conversation, that interaction. When you're watching the movie, I don't think it was a scene. I thought that when he bumps into this guy, I thought it was going to take an uglier sort of turn. You know what I mean? Like a humiliating turn. You know what I mean? And it didn't.
That's kind of when I say that I on the page I didn't know what was there, and I discovered that it was much more interesting once we were working on it, because I think it's exactly that. It's interesting to me how many people say, "Oh, you played the douchebag who," and then sometimes their person they're with is like, "No, he wasn't a douchebag. He was just talking. He was just like, oh my God, it's you," and oh, how crazy. But it's interesting that to see
you're so anticipating that the guy's going to be a d-bag that when he's not, that maybe you have that in your head. I did, but but then it was really. No,
I'm glad. Thanks, man.
I'm going to go back and watch it again. Also, you should everybody should check out The Holdovers and Billions and The Americans and watch for Kelly. What is the next thing that we were watching for that you were? It's called Clipped on Hulu, FX production. It's about Donald Sterling and the Clippers scandal.
Oh, wow. And it's based on a great Ramona Shelburne podcast, 30 for 30 podcast called The Sterling Affairs. This Clipper ship is something my character had. Get it? Clippers.
Oh, that's great. By the way, the Clippers' new logo is awful. But I'm going to go check that out. Now, I'll just tell you this. I know we're way late, but I'll tell you this real quick. So I, during this whole Donald Sterling thing, when it broke, was on a radio in Los Angeles and on KFI radio, and they were talking about how I didn't know the Sterlings. I don't know them at all. I just know them from and talking about how much more valuable the franchise is still, like $1.5 billion or whatever it was. And they were talking about getting a divorce, Donald Sterling and his wife, Shelley Sterling. And I kept saying jokingly, wow, we do the story about how valuable the Clippers organization was, they were going to likely sell it. And I would always say, wow, that Shelley Sterling is just more, she's so cute. I think she's cuter every day. And she's like 80 years old. And so that was the bit. I kept talking about Shelley Sterling. Oh, my God, she's so cute. They would do the story about how they're going to get a divorce and she's going to get all this money, and I would talk about how cute she is. So nothing happens. Weeks and weeks and weeks go by, and I get invited to Shelley Sterling's house to play poker.
No.
Yes. Out of
what?
Okay, so Donald and Shelley Sterling's house in Malibu. So I'm thinking, is this a setup? I mean, am I going to just get, is this going to be a gangland slaying when I get there? So I show up. It's stunning. There's a tennis court in front. You walk through. Then there's Malibu is really hard. Real estate is hard to come by in Malibu. They have an expansive place, as you might know. They're billionaires. And then you get to the main house, and then there's a pool out back, and then a little pathway to the beach. She's not at the table when I first sit there. We're playing, and now I'm just starting to sweat like, oh my God, she is going to blast me in front of all these people. Even though it was sort of good nature, but it was, you could take it the wrong way. She sat down and she was utterly charming. She clearly had no, knowledge of this, maybe. And then she invited me to a Clippers game with her. And it's the only time I've ever sat at center court on the floor, on the wood, was with Shelley Sterling at the Clippers game. It was the greatest.
Once you see this series, it premieres June 5th. Once you see the series, there's a lot of finagling over those seats, like Donald and her seats, and the mistress, and where she sat, and there was a lot of power play over that. So maybe you were the boy toy, like Donald had the little hot little number, and she's like, "I'm gonna get me some Thompson."
She brought a whole crew, but then she said, "Mark, you and I are going to sit on the floor."
Man,
it was super cool, man. And I've lost touch with her. I feel bad, but it was really great. And I will see clipped. I'll see it within the next week. I mean,
it doesn't air till June 5th.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So it's
I should have said. Yeah.
All right, June 5th clipped. You'll come back. We'll talk more. Kelly, thank you. So much fun, man.
Thanks, brother.
We'll talk soon. Kelly O'Coin, everybody. Bravo. How about that guy?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Love my Kelly O'Coin.
Yeah. Is it too early to say he's now a new friend of the show?
Oh, no, he is absolutely
Can we say
a friend
that?
of the show.
Yeah, he's down there going, yeah, okay, good. We're like,
here is
friend of the show. Sweet.
Katie says, wow, I had a brief meeting and just came back. Is this gentleman's father, Les O'Coin from Oregon?
Yep.
Yes, exactly. I went to Willamette U in Salem. Les O'Coin was among my faves. How about that?
Yeah.
Wow, same crew. I'll catch it in a replay, the whole conversation. Yeah.
You know when you like someone and you meet them for the first time, but you just kind of think, oh, this is a really cool person. I could see now that I'm going to be watching for him in all these movies and totally rooting for him to be like the next big, A-list superstar. I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, he's a real actor, and there's so many brilliant actors like Kelly who are making good livings without having to be Tom Cruise. You know what I mean? But I really respect, his work. And I think a great example of it is just that small scene in The Holdovers, but it's such a critical, pivotal scene. And it could have been overdone or, there's so many different ways you could just tweak it a little bit and it would ruin it. And it's so perfect. I think that's very difficult. And as I say, when I'm watching the movie, it's just part of the story. He didn't leap out at me or anything. Really, really great. So he'll be back. Yes, he's a friend of the show. Awesome. David Katz, the brilliant former federal prosecutor, joins us next. We'll talk about the Supreme Court deciding to get involved in this immunity case. There's an absurdity to it. There's also I would suggest, a political strategy to it. Eileen says, thanks for the interview with the great Kelly O'Coin. Yeah. A lot of love for Kelly.
Yeah.
Cool. We probably should have him on more.
I know.
We can exploit our relationship. So Kim's News and Cats next. Smash the like button like a boss if you would. It helps us. It's free, and we appreciate it. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. The House is approving a short-term funding bill to avert a partial government shutdown this weekend. The legislation kicks two government funding deadlines to March 8th and March 22nd, buying lawmakers a little more time to come to an agreement on appropriations bills. The Senate is expected to vote on this legislation before Friday's deadline. Because we had Steve Garvey on earlier, I thought this was interesting because a new poll came out today. It's a California Politics Emerson College poll. Just a few days now before the primary here in California, Democrat Adam Schiff continues to maintain a lead in the race for the U.S. Senate seat, but the race for second is now within the margin of error. The survey of 1,000 likely voters was done between February 24th and 27th. It found Schiff with a support of 28% of likely voters. Republican former Major League Baseball player Steve Garvey with 20%, and then Democratic Representative Katie Porter with 17%, within the margin of error there. So that's a statistical dead heat. Congresswoman Barbara Lee had 8%, and interestingly, there's 17% of voters with just a few days away that remain undecided in this race. So there's a lot of movement there. We could really see some things happen.
And the other thing I would say is if you take Barbara Lee out of that race, I suspect it's a 1-2 Schiff Porter race, and Garvey's in third. That's what be, I think Barbara Lee vote isn't going to Garvey, right? Yeah. We know that it would likely go to, I would suggest it would probably go to Porter.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's interesting that these last minute changes could make the race. The coast of Northern California rocking last night. Several moderate earthquakes hit in the Pacific Ocean. The quakes ranging in magnitude from 3.4 to 4.9 were centered about 150 miles west of Crescent City, according to the USGS. And that's an area called the subduction zone, where the tectonic plates divide below another, causing frequent earthquakes. Ultimately, that's what created the Sierra Nevada mountain range. They had no damage or injuries on land because of these quakes, but interesting to note, there was a swarm of them, a lot of them at once. So we get a little action there. There's new data showing nearly half of the people cited in San Francisco for drug use don't even live in the city. In an effort to shut down open-air drug markets, San Francisco looked at data from March of 2023 through the beginning of this month. Of the 718 people cited for substance abuse, only 53% said they lived in San Francisco. It's called drug tourism. The numbers also found dozens of those cited were getting county assistance and didn't live in the county, so are actually committing welfare fraud. Supervisor Matt Dorsey says the numbers confirm San Francisco is too often a destination for drug tourism. Mayor London Breed says the city has to continue doubling down on shutting down the markets that are attracting people into San Francisco for all the wrong reasons. The owner of Faces nightclub in Midtown Sacramento is planning a new restaurant that used to be home to something called Costanza's. So they purchased this restaurant on L Street for $1.3 million and plan to convert it and an adjacent vacant building on 21st and L into a restaurant and bar. So that'll be interesting for folks in the Sacramento area. President Biden will call on Congress to pass a bipartisan border security bill when he visits the U.S.-Mexico border today. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the legislation will provide critical funding for Border Patrol, more asylum officers, and other resources to address the crisis.
Well, the last bill, obviously, was DOA. I mean, the GOP was behind it. It looked like it was going to pass, and then Trump got involved and said, don't pass it. It's I don't want a solution to the border. I'll provide the solution to the border. I'm the one, only I. And they fell in line. GOP did not pass it. So, a bipartisan bill has already been launched, and it never made it off.
I'm sure you'll talk about this with a former federal prosecutor, David Katz, but the Supreme Court is going to decide whether former President Trump can claim immunity over his election interference charges. The former president taken to Truth Social to thank the Supreme Court, saying legal scholars are extremely thankful for this decision. We'll ask David Katz about that. He added that without immunity, a president will not be able to function properly. Okay. Yeah. Meanwhile, delays in one of these cases that is critical. California will receive at least 10 feet of snow through the weekend and see blizzard-like conditions. The winter storm will bury California in its biggest snowfall of the year. While it could pose a danger to travelers, meanwhile, they're saying do not drive to Tahoe unless you're there by tonight, which means you'd already need to be on the road from the Bay Area. It may help boost the state's water supply and tourism. So this is a good thing, although I was reading earlier, Mark, that they say the snow level is dropping. So we could see snow around hillsides here in the Bay Area as well. Oh, yeah,
I'm sure. It's a really cold storm, but boy, there's a lot of snow with it. I mean, this is a very intense situation. I mean, if you don't need to travel to the mountains, don't. And if you're there, don't do one of those things where, we've got visitors coming in, we'll go pick them up at the Reno airport and come back up. You won't get back up,
No. Smoking weed frequently could lead to a higher risk of heart attack and stroke.
Oh, I'm glad you're doing this story because I was going to do it.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Exactly. This was pretty. I thought of all my weed smokers when
This is according to a new study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, and it was led by UCSF researchers and funded by the National Institutes of Health. If you use cannabis daily, predominantly by smoking it, you may increase your risk of heart attack by 25% and stroke.
Yeah.
And stroke by 42%.
That's a lot. That's huge. Those are huge numbers.
Significant. If you dabble weekly, the risk drops, but you're still putting your heart and brain health on the line, not according to this analysis. Smoking weekly, you're at 3% higher risk for heart attack, 5% higher risk for stroke. It's unclear, though, whether there's a direct causation between smoking marijuana and heart attacks and stroke, but it's one of the largest studies to show a connection between marijuana use and cardiovascular health. So,
I mean, I don't know how much of that is the smoking part and how much of the, these are interesting. I'd like to see.
Like your edibles are fine, but your smoking not so much?
Well, when you say your edibles, I don't. I'm just saying.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Edibles could be fine.
Who is having that conversation?
I have so much more, but I'm going to wrap this bad boy up because we've got former prosecutor David Katz on the line. So I'll just say I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, right on, everybody. Great show so far. We've had a lot going on, and the next few minutes will be no different. Smash the like button if you would. It's free, and we appreciate that. We're a crowd-funded show. We're not asking you for money right now, although we certainly do appreciate all the ways you support us, but a quick thumbs up would help. This guy is the former federal prosecutor, now working as a defense attorney in Southern California. He is all over media, and with more and more legal issues, and now the Supreme Court taking up more and more very relevant cases. He's been all over media. Albert, do you have the David Katz? Where this is on Fox 5 in New York. Gosh, David is on
the Mark Thompson throw pillow.
Yes, you can. Thank you, David Katz, for repping the Mark Thompson Show throw pillow. Would have liked it actually in front of the diploma if you could next time. So
what?
I'm just saying, I don't mean to restyle your office, but how about it for David Katz, everyone?
Great to be with you.
Well, David, this is remarkable, but you'll contextualize this. The Supreme Court reaching in to take this immunity case, which really helps delay, as I understand it, Trump's court case, even if they rule against the presidential immunity that Trump is trying to get.
Well, with this decision, time is kind of running out for there to be a verdict, guilty or not guilty, in the D.C. insurrection case, the attempt to subvert the election by Trump. That case is kind of running out of time because they've set the hearing now the U.S. Supreme Court has on this presidential immunity. They've set it for the week of April 22nd. Normally, they decide their cases by the end of June. So if this is one and it's a major case, now that they've taken it, obviously, if you're expecting it to be the end of June, let's say July 1st, you count about 2 or 3 months that the district judge there in Washington, D.C., Mark, has said that she's going to give them to get to trial. If she holds to that schedule, even a decision that they can proceed with the trial against Trump, that there is no bar, he doesn't enjoy presidential immunity as to these charges. So then what is that? That's, I still count with my fingers, that's August 1st, September 1st, October 1st. Now, there's also a rule that the Department of Justice has that they're not supposed to take politically significant actions that would affect the election within 60 days of the election. But I think there are 2 caveats that make sense. Number one, this all started well before 60 days, and the actions that would be taken, the trial, let's say, during those 60 days, the ongoing trial of Trump, is something Trump asked for. He asked for these delays. He put himself into this window for the Department of Justice, because Jack Smith does work ultimately for the Department of Justice, for him to stand back and say, oh, this rule really bars me from stopping. We have to delay the trial or not pick the jury until after the election. That would seem farcical. And I think the other thing is that the word needs to go out either from Jack Smith or from other people that these defense attorneys for Trump need to make a big plan B if they don't win the presidential immunity argument. And if they do find themselves in trial, bring your motions, do your trial preparation, get all ready. If the district judge said that she was expecting about 88 days from the decision to trial, we were not quite expecting that the 88 days would be 88 days from July 1st. So there may be ways also that the prosecutor can curtail the charges a little bit, pick the most important ones of the charges, so it will be a shorter trial. But right now, it's looking perilous that there would actually be a verdict, guilty or not guilty, before the November election. And of course, that's important because pollsters say maybe 6 or 7% of the people say it would affect their vote. They would be much less likely to vote for Trump, 6 or 7%. And of course, with that will swing the whole election. If there really are 6 to 7% of the people who are going to vote for Trump who would not vote for him, saying, look, I'm not going to vote for someone who's just been unanimously found guilty by a jury of his peers to be the president. I like the guy. I like him more than Biden, but no, I don't like him that much that I'm going to put a felon in the White House. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen now, Mark. It really does not look like there will be a verdict, guilty or not guilty, before early November.
Help me with the unusual move of the Supreme Court to, this is where I really have to understand it, and you can help me. There's a circuit court that's already weighed in on this issue of immunity. They said it's ridiculous. I mean, they really wrote, even a conservative justice I was reading said, a conservative judge said, hey, this is absurd. We can't have there's not an argument for the president not being prosecutable for things that he did that were illegal in office. But the Supreme Court has decided to take this case, or at least do what, David? How unusual is this? What isn't that what happened, what I just described?
Yeah, let me just separate a little bit the procedural from the substantive.
Thank you.
Procedurally, I think the U.S. Supreme Court justices, if they would whisper in your ear, the ones in the middle or on the right, would say to you, delay by Merrick Garland is not an emergency for me. He took over 2 years to even appoint a special prosecutor. That seems quite slow. And the U.S. Supreme Court justices would say to you, we're actually moving quite fast, given the fact that we're going to take this case. Trump wanted it to go back to the D.C. Circuit, because in the normal course, if you lose in a circuit court, you can ask the entire court as a group, we call that en banc, to hear it. Maybe you got the three most conservative judges or the three most liberal judges on the bench. You want the entire bench to look at it. And obviously, if a bench were, let's say, 8-3, in a certain direction, but you got the three appellate judges who went for you or against you, you would have a different result en banc. That happens like 0.1% of the time in the real world. But of course, Trump wants to do that because it's more delay. What they have said, if you're looking for the silver lining in the Supreme Court delaying this, is that they did not send it back to the D.C. Circuit for the D.C. Circuit to do it en banc, which is what Trump wanted. They didn't build in even more delay. And there is no reason why, after the week of April 22nd, they couldn't issue a decision May 1st or May 2nd. They don't have to wait until the end of June. So in that sense, I think the U.S. Supreme Court would say, and it only takes apparently 4 of the 9 justices to grant cert. So it doesn't mean that they have 5 votes to say that there is presidential immunity. And if you want to turn substantively to presidential immunity, that seems very far-fetched, except, everyone uses the example, can a president really shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, say during their term of office that they are not indictable as a sitting president, and then say once they're not a sitting president anymore, they have lifetime presidential immunity. And you can imagine some close cases, but the amici curiae, the ones who've gone in and expressed their own opinion, which are basically a bunch of sort of, middle of the road Republicans, people that you've heard of, people who are not with Trump. And they have said, look, there may be some hard cases out there. There might be some line drawing, something that really was close to official acts of the president. But this isn't. This case is easy. This case, you just say, did Trump enjoy presidential immunity for what he's charged with doing? We don't need to discuss and decide every difficult philosophical line drawing thing. look at this case. And the way that they presented the question, which is this very short question, the Supreme Court said, answer this question, you advocates, when you come for your argument in April and in your briefs. Answer this question, which is, does the president and to what extent enjoy presidential immunity for allegedly official acts? And critics have said that's such a broad question. It's so philosophical. It's not the narrow question, and judges are supposed to decide the narrow question, Mark. And the narrow question is, look at what Trump is charged with. Does he have immunity for what he's charged with? And if a president has immunity for what he's charged with, for stealing an election, for calling out this mob when he couldn't get Pence's arm twisted as far as he wanted to twist it, why shouldn't every president do that? Why shouldn't every one-term president try to get a second term? For that matter, why shouldn't a two-term president try to get a third term that he or she is not entitled to by the Constitution? What is the deterrent for lawlessness, for a despotic one-term president demanding to stay in office, calling out the military, calling out the armed agents who work for the federal government to try to keep power instead of obey the Constitution and give it up? What is the deterrent, for God's sake, if there's lifetime immunity?
If it's such an easy and obvious case, why wouldn't the Supreme Court have just let the lower ruling stand?
Well, Mark and I think you were on the program that day too, we talked about this case called Nixon v. Fitzgerald. And it's a very troubling case because a president, in this case, President Nixon, had lifetime immunity from being sued. And it looked like it was a very righteous lawsuit. It was brought after Nixon was the president. Nixon was not granted a pardon from all civil actions. And so it was a live question. And that live question was decided 5-4, that while it seemed like anyone else in America would have been liable for it, and the suit would have gone forward, the suit seemed very righteous on the facts and the law. They said there is lifetime presidential immunity from civil suit. And the 4 dissenters in that case said, this is madness. How can this be the rule? Would there be lifetime presidential immunity from a criminal action? They didn't have to decide it there because Nixon had a pardon. So Nixon was excused from ever standing trial or facing a criminal action. Never had to be decided in Nixon, never had to be decided in any other case. So if you think, well, okay, so it's unprecedented, and that's what the U.S. Supreme Court does, is take unprecedented cases. And I think the other argument that you can make for maybe why they took it, and yet they're going to turn it down in the end, they're going to say there is no presidential immunity for Trump from these charges, is that they're starting to raise that now in a different circuit, which is down in the 11th Circuit with the Judge Cannon case, saying, you know what? If he took the documents from Washington, D.C., well, he had presidential immunity. He was still the president when he took all those documents that he took on the last day or the last couple of days. So if that's going to be an issue down there, we're going to have maybe the 11th Circuit rule one way. They're not bound by what the D.C. Circuit just said, which was 3-0, Trump, you lose. They figured, we're the Supreme Court over all the circuits. We should take this. And as the argument that they're just playing into the delay, they would answer, I don't mean to keep dumping on him, that it took over 2 years to appoint a special prosecutor. And while Jack Smith has moved expeditiously, they're going to say, so have we, the U.S. Supreme Court. We stood an argument in 2 months. What do you want from our lives?
Well, you know how I feel about Jack. Jack Smith is, as you say, he's been the gold standard. But Merrick Garland has just been so much weak sauce that I can't believe, it's. I can't believe that guy was not. Wasn't he a Supreme Court nominee? Merrick Garland.
He was the one they would net McConnell. And there are some people who are actually lamenting McConnell because they think, the next Republican leader will be even worse. He'll be just as bad as McConnell, but he'll be an isolationist. Let Russia and China win-ist. But yes, McConnell infamously never called a vote on Merrick Garland. He said it was too close to the election. It was 10 months in front of the election. That's way too close. And then when they had a chance to put Barrett on there, when RBG passed away, suddenly 3 weeks wasn't too close. 3 weeks was plenty of time to put a Supreme Court justice on there when it was one that they wanted. It was way too early to do it for Obama when Merrick Garland was the nominee. And of course, the knock on Merrick Garland was that he was very moderate, that they put him up because he was someone the Republicans would act on. And of course, McConnell and the Republicans had the last laugh, and they got to put they got to put Gorsuch up there and not Merrick Garland on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, the Democrats trying to somehow go moderate so they get it through. The Republicans don't mess with that stuff. They just they grab it and then shove it down your throat. That's exactly what they did. And it's interesting, those justices to whom you've referred, I want to say Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and maybe Gorsuch, were they involved in the Bush-Gore case in the or is that too long ago? I feel as though they might have been helping the Republicans steal the presidency in Florida, that vote in Florida that went to the Supreme Court. They were not Supreme Court justices then, I understand, but they helped. They were the lawyers working on that case for the Republicans.
Some of them were, and of course, Clarence Thomas does go back that far. And some of the people that we really admire, Justice O'Connor, she was the fifth vote to give the election to Bush and not Gore. As people said, with all that counting and recounting and all those close states, there was only one vote that ever really mattered. 5-4 on the U.S. Supreme Court to stop the count. They counted the vote later on, Mark, and guess who won Florida when they counted it all fair and square? Gore.
And it was ridiculous. I'd love to talk about that. We should have I'd like to do a separate video that we drop just about that and how that election was stolen. Think about how things would have been so very different. I mean, if Gore had been given the presidency rightfully, and you would have had Iraq, you would have had an environmental awareness and policy and strategy moving forward. The GOP knows how to play hardball, but the Democratic Party doesn't seem to know how, says Walter. I want to ask you about one other case, and then I want to get to the Henley case, just because I think it's so extraordinary, and I know you've been following it, which has nothing to do with politics. But Trump will have to stand trial in the Stormy Daniels case, right? Explain to me why and how that's going to proceed, because I think a lot of those details may be part of the zeitgeist moving forward, and that's going to be uncomfortable for Trump.
Well, I think that, if you could have had this all to do over again, it would have been much better if the Jack Smith case had gone first. It would have also been better if the Mar-a-Lago case had been filed by Jack Smith in Washington, D.C., which is where I always thought it belonged, where there clearly was venue. And then that case might be going along, because they would have had a judge who was, to say the least, more familiar with national security procedures, could have handled it more expeditiously and gotten that case to trial. But it doesn't look like either one of those federal cases is going to go first. Of course, the case down in Atlanta in state court is a mess. And so the fourth one, criminal case, looks like it's going to go first. It looks like it's really going to go in March. This is the one that has been referred to as the hush money case, the case with the porn actress, the case with Michael Cohen. The DA's office would like it to be treated with more respect and be called an election interference case, because what happened was that you have to file correct campaign finance statements. You have to say where you really got money from, where the money went. Those are signed under penalty of perjury. So Trump wants to pay off Stormy Daniels, because he's already had the touch women in their private parts. They'll go for it if you're a celebrity. He's already had that terrible, salacious, tape come out. And he figures this is really it with the suburban women that I need. If now Stormy Daniels talks about it, and she's going to talk about it in the context of he and Melania have just had a baby. Instead of being home with his wife who's just given birth, he's out philandering with this Stormy Daniels and paying her a lot of money for sex. So he wants to hush that up. But in order to hush it up, he has Michael Cohen pay her off. He wants the National Enquirer to take care of her. The National Enquirer has taken care of one of his mistresses, paid her hush money to basically, buy her story and then kill it. The National Enquirer is not interested in buying Stormy Daniels' story and killing it. So if they're going to pay her off, Trump has to pay her off, and allegedly he pays her off through Michael Cohen. They phony up a whole bunch of campaign records. They phony up a whole bunch of New York business records. And so he's on trial, Trump is, for causing Michael Cohen to pay that money, to do this side deal, to make it look like it was something that he wasn't. And like a business that, creates two sets of books, he created a whole set of books that were phony, and that's a violation of New York law. Now, he has to know he's violating New York law, and especially New York campaign law, to boost it up to a felony. So after it goes all the way to trial, he may only be convicted of a misdemeanor. And on top of that, it just seems improbable that he would be sent off to prison, Rikers Island, like his CFO was for this. So the idea that it's going to have a huge impact on people's vote, that he might be found guilty, which will also explain, well, it's a bunch of people in New York City who don't like me. I mean, it would have to be 12 unanimously, but Trump would spin it. It's a bunch of New Yorkers who don't like me. It's all political. It's a nothing burger. And I don't think that he would be sitting in jail having to run from jail in October for the presidency. So people think, how much impact is it really going to have politically? It's a bit of a fraught case. It's a bit of a difficult case. And one last thing, the New York DA there, Alvin Bragg, he and his predecessor, this Vance fellow, they had a great case against Trump. They had basically all the phoning up criminally that ended up being just a civil case. The case where he ended up having to pay $400 million was all chargeable and was going to be charged, Mark, as a criminal case. There were two special prosecutors. When they weren't going to charge it as a criminal case, didn't get charged by his predecessor, Vance, it didn't get charged by Bragg. They threw their hands up in the air. They both resigned. One of them wrote a book. And then in the fullness of time, they charged what looks like sort of a weaker piece of the whole strong whole. There's a strong whole of allegations that should have been all brought by the DA, which was the financial fraud, which was saying the same thing was worth an awful lot of money when he wanted a loan, and saying the same thing was worth a lot less money when it came to paying taxes on it. And it was going to include this campaign violation thing with phoning up the business records in New York. And so now we have a piece of it that I just think is problematic. It'll be entertaining when the trial goes forward, but this is about a lot more than entertainment. This is the future of the nation. And are we going to have somebody who really does have tendencies not to leave power when he loses, like Trump back in there? It's a real, to me, it's very scary for democracy. And that's a real thing. And I don't know if this would be the case I would want to have go first on the allegations that it has, but it looks like whether we like it or not, it's about to go first. Late March.
Yeah, as I think you said, and I certainly feel very strongly. I think if you could lead with the documents case, even I think the J6 case is probably the most significant, but the documents case is easy to understand. Why are you hauling thousands of documents out of the White House and putting them in Mar-a-Lago? But as you've so beautifully articulated here before, that case belongs in Washington. And instead, they threw it to Florida, and that's where the Trumpy judge is essentially delaying it. I see that judge denies Trump request to post a $100 million bond instead of impossible. The $464 million penalty goes forward.
Can I comment on that just for a moment before we get to Don Henley? Go ahead, Kim.
Can you dicker with this court like that? Well, you want me to pay X, but here's what I'm going to pay you. I mean, this is not a negotiation, right?
No, he treats it like he's at the bazaar, right? And it's like, what do you mean? $100 for the rug? I'll give you $10. You start to walk away. I tell you what, I'll sell it for $80. This is how Trump rolls. But number one, you can't do that with a court. On top of that, the idea that there is some unfairness to this is unbelievable. 1% of appeals are won. So as between the 1% person, the 1% chance of winning, you don't get to pay at the end because people will change the assets, they'll bust out, they'll do something fraudulent, they'll legitimately go broke. If you get a judgment, and 99% of the judgments are affirmed on appeal, you have to either get the judgment collected then, not in years when the appeal is over, or you've got to post a bond for it. This is like civil procedure 101. This is not some strange thing. And the idea that, well, Trump might have to sell 40 Wall Street. Oh, my God. He might have to sell Trump International on Central Park West. The whole allegation is that he got those properties. The reason that he has 7 or 8 great properties is because he lied to get them. He cheated the banks. They gave him lower interest rates. Instead of giving him a 5% rate, they gave him a 3% rate because they thought he had so much collateral to cover it. And so he saved millions and millions of dollars. He was able to buy 7 or 8 properties. Had he been honest, he could have bought 3 or 4 properties, let's say. So the idea that he has to sell 1 property now because he got called to account for all the cheating that he did is like, oh my God, he might have to sell 40 Wall Street. I worked at 40 Wall Street the summer that I worked on Wall Street during law school at Berkeley. And let me tell you, 40 Wall Street was a beautiful place. It'll be beautiful again without Trump's name on it. No harm will be done.
I'm so out of time. Give me 90 seconds on this Henley case in New York. He's essentially, it's about the lyrics to Hotel California, but it's become this tawdry case involving a hooker who's 16 years old. And, it's really gross.
You may remember November 1980. as when Reagan beat Carter, but it also is when the Eagles broke up. And in the depression of the Eagles breaking up, Don Henley says he took it very hard. It's a criminal case. And so the prosecutor wants to take the sting out of the revelation that Don Henley, their star witness, has a prior misdemeanor. So he described the prior misdemeanor, and that's what is tawdry for being with this 16-year-old escort, doing a lot of drugs with her. He says he didn't have sex with her, but he did a lot of drugs with her. He ended up with a misdemeanor on account of this episode. But the remarkable thing about it is that it's in criminal court. The remarkable thing is that it's not just a lawsuit between Henley, who can afford to bring a lawsuit, and the people that he wants to sue. He's gotten the district attorney down there in New York to run with this case. There's no jury. It's a judge trial. It could have been a jury trial. The defendants and the DA had to waive jury, which probably makes sense because, Mark, you and I have talked about this, the power that charming celebrities have. And a lot of times people think that it's very hard to beat a celebrity in front of a jury. And so the defendants are not trying to do that. But my question, especially now I'm a criminal defense attorney, is why are these three people in criminal court? The person who supposedly took the notes, that is the writing pad on which the original lyrics of Hotel California were written by Henley, he lent that to somebody to use to make a book. Then they didn't like the book. Him and Glenn Fry didn't like the book, so they never published the book. This guy who was going to write the book ended up with these notes. He sold these notes of this song to one of the defendants for $50,000, right? It wasn't like it was hot stolen property. It was all over the place that it was hot. And he didn't buy it for $5. He didn't buy it for $100. He bought it for $50,000, the price for a collectible, lyrics like that. And then this one criminal defendant sold it to the other two criminal defendants for $65,000. Again, my question is what they're doing in criminal court. I think this one may be an acquittal. And the thing that bothers me about this case is this is the same office that's about to prosecute Trump. This looks like not, in my opinion, exercise of good judgment by that office. And to go into the Trump trial with a high-profile acquittal is not how, I'm a former federal prosecutor, that's never how you want to go into anything. You want to win all your cases like I did when I was a prosecutor, and you want the world to know we win our cases. I mean, it won't make Trump plead guilty, but it will not make it look better that they have a high-profile acquittal. And I don't understand why this case is in criminal court and not in civil court, except as the judge said yesterday when they had testimony that there were 4 guitars on Hotel California. It may not be relevant, but it sure is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. So essentially, when you say an acquittal, you're talking about those accused of this, the rare book dealer, the memorabilia people who are also involved in the chain of provenance with the lyrics. They've all pleaded not guilty, and they may be indeed acquitted. Thanks, David. We're out of time. Love talking to you, and I look forward to next week, and we'll see you on all the different media outlets that you frequent between now and then.
That screenshot that you showed at the beginning was me on Fox in New York City. And of course, huge story in New York City because the trial's going on in New York City. And my goodness, it's Don Henley. You know, I heard Hotel California driving over here to do your show. I thought they were going to report on this. No, it was just the millions of times that Hotel California's played on the internet and on the radio.
Huge song. And next time, move the throw pillow in front of the diploma, please. David Katz, everybody. See you, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, I want to do something here. We're going to go to Belinda. I want to ask you something, Kim and Albert and Belinda. I really would like to make a major change. We do these things out loud because we never have a chance to meet because Kim does another show and we can't get everybody together. I think Belinda would comfortably get in on Wednesdays without having to impinge upon her time at all.
That's a good idea.
Do we? You know what I mean?
Should I bring her in?
I'm thinking as we're going. This is some holdover from the radio because this show was born on the radio. And are you available on Wednesdays, Belinda? Could you do it then?
Yeah, I could do it on Wednesdays. Yes.
Okay, so I think
that would be good because
in the future, I'd like to do that. That way, she gets all of her time. There's no sense of rush, whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean,
you
you'll get all your time.
You guys need to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole enchilada of what's happening to the planet, right?
So what did you say? What?
You want to hear all the things that are happening to the planet.
Exactly.
The good, the bad, the whole lot.
The ugly, yes. Well, you know, I absolutely want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, so from this point forward, You will see and hear Belinda on Wednesdays at this time. And we will move It's the Planet Stupid to then. But today, we press on. And this is It's the Planet Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet Stupid. No. It's the planet Stupid.
She is Belinda Waymouth, the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's happening with the environment. What's up today?
Oh, well, this has been an unbelievably crazy hot winter, and particularly this week we've been all over the place. You know, Dallas on Tuesday got to 94 degrees. Chicago was in the 70s. Over the weekend it was, Saturday it was 60, then Monday and Tuesday it was hot. Yesterday Chicago went down to 30. Today by noon it was at 37, and so right now they're cold, then there's going to be more hot weather coming, and then more cold. It's all over the place. And 200 countries around the world have recorded this incredible winter heat this past week. Or obviously not all winter. Yeah, I mean, look at it. I mean, it's red, it's angry, it's crazy. And what's happening, and what the research is saying is like, look, there's this supply of cold air. It's a cold air pool, and it lives a mile up in the atmosphere, and this pool of cold air, and there's a really great graphic in one of the stories I sent you, a graph that shows you. So we've been measuring it for the last 76 years, and this year it's going to be at its second year of being really, really tiny. And the smaller that cold air gets, the more intrusion we can get from warm weather. And this just unbelievable sort of, it's a roller coaster. It's this crazy, crazy roller coaster of temperatures. And it messes with ecosystems. It messes with people. We're animals too. And we're used to the seasons, the cycles that we go through. In Maine, I mean, the poor moose in Maine are being decimated by the ticks, because the ticks don't have any off season now. They can just come in and suck your blood all year round. And it's terrible. I mean, I won't go into the details of what's happening to the moose, but trust me, it's ghastly. And the thing about these numbers is, often people will want to argue with temperatures taken on the Earth's surface, because they'll say, oh, there's urbanization and there's all the things that, happen that we do here. Well, you can't argue with a pool of cold water that's cold air that's a mile above us. We're not up there. It's just our greenhouse gases that are, causing it to be smaller and smaller. And it's, wrecking crazy, having crazy effects on our temperatures.
It's so brutal because increasingly the effects are what we have to deal with, because it would appear that there's a momentum to the cause that it's hard to slow,
Yeah. And the other thing, also is, and I think this is really important, is, when people talk about, skeptics of climate change or, deniers, and they try to say, well, sometimes the temperatures go up and sometimes they go down. There have been 8,000 heat records broken this winter, 8,000. And as far as cold records go, only 2,300. So the heating up is really significant and is really game on. And what was kind of ironic is that on Tuesday, when Chicago was having this incredible heat, that was the day that they joined a lot of other US cities in suing the fossil fuel industry. And they've gone one step further, actually, than just holding the fossil fuel industry responsible for all this damage that's being done. They also went after the biggest fossil fuel lobbying group, the American Petrochemical Institute. And the American Petrochemical Institute really is, obfuscating the data. They have these front groups that also promulgate, climate denial and, conspiracy theories about it. And so I think to go after a lobbying group, because I think the money that's involved with US politics and then, policy, absolutely hit those guys, because they are, this, huge part of the problem. And that happened on... on Tuesday. This
But
big
I
hot
do,
day.
and I do, promulgate is a ding word. I do believe that the court system and these lawsuits, in the same way that money ruins so much of American society, it's the only thing that corporations understand and answer to. And so, as you say, it's significant that Chicago has bellied up to the bar with their own lawsuit.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And, Chicago, I think it was 700. They had this heat wave in, I think it was 96. And it was 4 days of really extreme heat. 700 people died, So it's like this, it's game on. And we absolutely have to hold the fossil fuel industries, feet to the fire, because enough is enough. This is, we're done. We're done with this nonsense.
Yeah, there's the graph. I mean, it's just all there. The temperature anomalies over the years from 1880 to 2021, and right at the the height of the Industrial Revolution, there's a pop, and then now with sort of unbridled fossil fuel dominance from 1980 on, it's crazy. Look at those.
Well, this is, those numbers, when you look to the right of that graph, that is as the developing world industrializes, and millions of people come out of poverty, and that is good. That's a good thing. But we're burning coal and fossil fuels to do this. And
to lift up those societies.
Yeah. And we have to be going for alternatives.
You talk a lot about plastics and about the inundation with plastics and the utter ubiquity with which we find ourselves living around plastic. And I wonder if you could speak to this replacement. You had sent me something about cork
trees.
Please.
Yeah. So cork is this ancient material. So the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, the Egyptians, they were using cork thousands of years ago to do what we do with plastic. I mean, it was their fishing nets. They made their sandals out of it. They stoppered their jars and their barrels with it. It's light, it's water resistant, it can be compressed and bounce back. It's incredibly durable. It's fire resistant. Do you know that it's used in NASA spaceships to insulate the fuel tanks?
I mean, it's
it's unbelievable. It's being used in electric vehicles to insulate the batteries. And so this ancient. So every summer, what happens in the countries? So they're in the Western Mediterranean, and this story is out of Portugal. They're turning their cork into $1 billion business to replace plastics. So it's being turned into, again, shoes, furniture, and we know how good corks are on the tops of bottles. But so it's it has all these properties. And then the amazing thing about the cork oak trees, because you're not allowed to cut them down in Portugal, they're like they're their national tree. So you harvest the cork off the bark, and you have to be very skilled at doing it, because you have to cut just the right amount. You don't want to damage the tree underneath. You can only take the bark off a tree every 9 years, but the tree remains intact and grows more bark. And so you still have a habitat, you still have this place where animals can be. And here are the layers of cork, and they put it out in the sun, and then they boil it up, they get the impurities out of it, and then they can turn it into all these different materials, furniture, this insulation against fires, flooring, shoes again, all these things. And, as we absolutely need an alternative to plastic. So the fact that, it's there and is this sustainable, regenerative. Oh, and the other great thing about the fact that the trees stay in the forests is all the carbon that's sequestered in them stays in them. So you're not chopping down trees to make a plastic alternative and having all this CO2 go into the atmosphere. In fact, cork is carbon negative. It's sequestering more of the carbon than it takes to produce it. So it's kind of a win-win. I think it's for you, Kim. This story's for you.
It's truly something. I mean, I was completely unaware of this cork replacement thing, which is a big phenomenon, as it turns out. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's that thing that I talk about on the show all the time, my favorite, low tech, high impact. Take take this technology that we already have that is naturally in the world and could help us, and use it. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Cork.
Yeah, really
For
cool.
some reason, I thought we had a problem with cork, that wine companies were switching away from cork because there was a cork shortage or something.
Right, because you have all those screw tops now on wine bottles. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I mean, the fact is Portugal is turning, I mean, they're making a lot of money right now out of their cork. And I'm sure these other Western Mediterranean countries will, that have cork forests will want to follow suit because, it's a win-win.
Belinda, there is there's a phenomenon which is indisputable, which is that the saltwater intrusion
this is huge,
is a problem that many farmers, agricultural concerns are dealing with, because saltwater ain't friendly to crops. The salinity is, destructive. So something's being done by the Dutch that is particularly innovative. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so, you have got to love the Dutch. They are at the forefront of turning climate change and everything that goes with it into an opportunity. That's how they're looking at it. They're talking about how will we be a country in 400 years. And remember, a quarter of the Netherlands is below sea level. And for the longest time of that country's history, they were fighting the water with, dikes and dams, and how do we channel it, and how do we get, more farmland. And now they're going, hey, this is what's happening. And so make reality our friend. And what they have done as far as, sort of incredible high-tech engineering, they've got that big sort of water gate that they have built. It was finished 20 years ago to protect Rotterdam. Rotterdam is one of the busiest ports in the world, and 90% of the city is below sea level. And so they've now got these enormous gates. They haven't had to use them yet, but if there's a storm surge, if the Northern Sea, sea level rise. And the thing that's interesting about the Netherlands, I'll get to the salty food in a minute, but, they have people from Ho Chi Minh City, New York, New Orleans, Bangladesh, visiting every week to say, show us how you're doing it. How are you, coping with water and with sea level rise when you're this country that's, below, sea level, so much of you. And the next thing that they're doing is like, hey, salinity and what it's doing to our croplands is really serious. So they're saying that right now, there's their big, I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, they've actually got a prototype for how to save Venice in Italy from sea level rise. Unfortunately, I think I've told this story before on the show. The Italians have said we don't have the money to do it, but the Dutch are ready. I mean, they're saving lives in Bangladesh when there's flooding, showing, how do you make the escape routes? How do you protect people? How do you have shelters?
Yeah, the technologies that they're developing are applicable elsewhere. So, So go ahead with this one. All right.
So what they're doing with the salinity, so already 20% of the world's cultivated land is being affected by salt. So what happens is you have higher temperatures, there's more evapotranspiration, the water's, going up into the atmosphere, the water that's in the water table gets sucked up through the plant's roots, and salt gets left. And we're dealing with it here. Mid-Atlantic farmers are dealing with salt water here. As we have droughts, you get seawater intrusion. So seawater will go up a dry riverbed. It will get into the water table. And how are we going to grow crops? Well, so what the Dutch are doing is they're going, okay, what are the plants that are edible that like salt? What are the beet and potato varietals that can handle salt? And it's just, I just love them. I'm just like, yay, Dutch people for going, look, rather than fighting this, trying to deny it, they're actually embracing it and saying, let's see the opportunity in this. The way they're reclaiming or sort of making, parts of their city sort of water friendly and water parks, and then, you know, creating public space. They're even, Dutch kids have to learn to swim with all their clothes and their shoes on. I mean, that's how much they're saying water is going to be a part of our future. So we have to know how to deal with it in any circumstances. And I think the thing with the salinity is Europe isn't even going to be as affected by salinity as countries in Africa are, in the Middle East. But the fact that the Dutch are already on it, I think is amazing, you know, because this will be, you know, truly helpful for other countries in the world.
Well, it's exactly what you said. They've adopted this kind of salt tolerance question on crops in Kenya and Egypt. And so this does become this is the reality, and we've got there's going to be a salinity issue. We have to figure out, you know, salinity resistance.
And what they are really what their sort of manifesto is how do we have environmental and societal resilience? You know, they're really looking at this, you know, very holistically, and how do we approach it in a way that, you know, takes care of the environment and us as creatures in it, you know, we completely rely on the environment. And I'd say, you know, hats off to them. I think it's really amazing and prescient and important, and
and as you say, applicable in so many different places worldwide, which is just so great. I mean, these innovations need to be shared. Prescient is a ding word. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on? I am happy to have gotten it all in, I think.
Yeah.
I love the cork story. I had no idea.
About, it's cool, right? It's cool.
Right. We know, I mean, I had an idea. I love that we put a face on exactly how the climate is changing and how heat records are being broken. And now, you know, essentially weather is being affected, which is the sort of the more microscopic part of climate. I mean, climate is the overall, weather is just the, you know, day to day. But the cork thing, I had no idea.
Yeah. No, it is. It's completely cool, and it's, you know, it's the thing that we say all the time. You know, we have to use everything. We have to use all the tools, use every, you know, lever that's out there to help ourselves right now. And the fact that, you know, the Portuguese are going back to this industry that's, you know, thousands of years old, you know, that we've been running around in cork-soled shoes forever. So, and to use it to, you know, the fact that thousands of years ago, that's what made their fishing nets. And now all the fishing nets are made out of plastic, which of course is so terrible in the ocean.
Well, that's the point. I mean, if we could do something to get, you know, to just beat this plastic stuff back a little bit, it's so everywhere. You can find her on social media, Belinda Waymouth, Waymouth. And from this point forward, you can find her here on Wednesdays.
Yes.
As we finish up the show around this time, we'll, if you're on the Pacific Coast, around 12:35, 12:40 every day, Belinda will be on Wednesdays. It's the Planet Stupid for today. Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great week.
More.
It's the Planet Stupid. No. It's the Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
You know, Albert, we just need to do that. You need to, you know, want some time for her to luxuriate.
Yeah.
So I think that's the cure for that.
She's pretty and smart. We need to give her more time.
Stan Pollock is my pretty and smart, my favorite CPA. I got busy, but I wanted to say earlier, good for you for having both sides on this show. Good for you, Stan Pollock, for recognizing the good for you. I say, I see your good for you, and I give you a good for you. I come over the top with a bigger good for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stan Pollock, my favorite CPA. For the
that reminds me of the time we had Brian Kilmeade on KGO when we were.
Oh yeah,
took a lot of calls off the air. Mark, I shielded you from those, but I took a lot of calls after we had him on.
We were rotisseried for having Brian Kilmeade on our show. Gail Guthrie, HOF, and she is in the game with a super sticker for $10. We're a crowdfunded show. I actually haven't mentioned all show that we appreciate any super chats and super stickers, and we also appreciate Patreon and PayPal. You can find them at themarkthompsonshow.com. There are click-throughs to both Patreon and PayPal there, and you could become part of that community that supports us. It's an important one, as I say, because we are crowd-funded. Well, I don't know. I think we've learned a lot about each other today. Yes. What's revealed isn't always pretty, but it's important. That's right.
What?
Albert, I'll see you tomorrow with a heavily curated Friday Fabulous Florida.
Yeah.
Curated is probably a dang word. Kim, I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll see you right now on the After Party Live, which is going down right now on the After Party Live channel. Everyone, tomorrow also, Michael Schur on politics. What an eventful week. We'll x-ray a little bit what's happening at the border and beyond, and bye-bye Mitch McConnell. Also, might I say, first I'll wait for Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
It was sad news that Richard Lewis passed. Glad we could spend a minute at least remembering him. Until tomorrow, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.